We are mere hours away from kickoff of our final two quarterfinal games of this World Cup. 4 teams remain in the quarterfinals. 2 have already moved on. 2 will advance today. 2 will go home. Who will it be? Will it be Norway advancing on to their first ever World Cup semifinal, or will it be England advancing to their first World Cup semifinal since 2018? Or will it be the defending champions Argentina advancing to a second straight semifinal? Or will it be Switzerland advancing to their first ever semifinal in their country's history? A lot to get to here. 2 games to preview. Saturday's action's coming up, so let's get after it. Welcome back into World Cup Preview, World Cup Today here on the Nick Burt Sports Network. I am your host, as always, Nick Burt. We have 2 games today. We already have France, we already have Spain into the semifinals. Who will be joining them today? Our first game of the day will kick off at 5 p.m. from the Miami Stadium. Now, it's going to be a scorcher of a game, going to be quite hot for both of these sides who are not used to that kind of heat, and that is Norway going up against England. Now, both sides have had interesting runs to this quarterfinal here. You have Norway, led by Erling Haaland, of course, dominated Iraq 4-1. I won't say dominated, but got by Senegal 3-2. They lost 4-1 to France, and of course, that game, they rested most of their starters, so there was a rotated squad. Then a 2-1 victory against Côte d'Ivoire that, took a Haaland goal in the 86th minute to get past them. And then it also was a 2-1 victory over Brazil in the round of 16 that saw the 5-time champions go out to the Vikings. On the England side, you had the 4-2 win against Croatia to open up the tournament, followed up by a just disgustingly awful 0-0 draw against Ghana. Followed that up by a not so convincing 2-0 win against Panama. Saw them advance on to the round of 32, where it did take a little bit of Harry Kane magic to get them past DR Congo 2-1. And then potentially in one of the games of the tournament was a 3-2 victory over Mexico at the Azteca last Sunday. So both these teams have felt like they've been on a collision course since the beginning of this tournament. And now we are finally here meeting up against one another in the World Cup quarterfinal. Now, of course, this is, I don't want to say uncharted territory for both teams, because for Norway it 100% is. They have never been this far in their country's history. England, on the other hand, yes, they made it to, the quarterfinals at the last World Cup where they lost to France. They made it to the semifinals in 2018 where they lost to Croatia. But you throw in the Euros in there in 2020, which was held in 2021, they made it all the way to the final and lost. Same thing in 24. They made it all the way to the final and lost. So this is a new experience, though, under manager Thomas Tuchel, who has not managed in a game like this. Now, he has managed in games like this in the club game. I'm talking the biggest competitions of them all, the FA Cup, the Champions League, the Pokal. He has played in big tournaments. It's just he hasn't done it on the international side, and this feels like, I'm not going to say the first real test, because that game at the Azteca was a massive test. You are going up against a hostile crowd, away environment, and it's an away game. You had to travel down to Mexico for that. It was a very, very impressive showing, especially given that the last 35 minutes, they were down to 10 men after the Kwanzaa red card, which is a story in its own right. The FA obviously appealed the red card, which you can't really do, but the FIFA disciplinary committee was going to have a look at it. And they upped the suspension to 2 games. So if England win, Quansah will still not be available for the semifinal, which, if you look at what happened in the Bellingham situation, 2 very different standards there. Overall, though, England do kind of seem to be getting bitten by the injury bug. It sounded like Mark Weahey picked up an injury in training this week. Declan Rice is not healthy. Bukayo Saka is not healthy. He hasn't been healthy all tournament. Elliot Anderson may still be carrying an injury. Most of those players, I believe, are expected to play come 5 p.m. today. But, Guehi, I'm not really sure. Obviously, we know Jordan Henderson is out. His arm is broken. He's not going to play. It's not like he played much of this tournament anyways. And then, of course, Quansah out with the red card suspension. So it's going to be interesting to see how tactically this team lines up for Thomas Tuchel. Now, as with Norway, who are only going as far as Erling Haaland takes them, England is only going as far as Harry Kane and Jude Bellingham take them. I believe Marcus Rashford is the only other player to score a goal for England at this tournament, other than Kane and Bellingham, which is kind of wild to say, just given the amount of talent this England team has. Now, you could look at the other side with Norway. Feels like Erling Haaland is their only goal scorer. Obviously, I believe Antonio Nusa has picked a goal up. That may be the only one. I don't fully remember. There might be somebody else in there. But this is truly a battle of the strikers between Erling Haaland and Harry Kane. This is going to be quite an interesting watch. Given England's history with European sides at World Cups, especially in the knockout stage, it's going to be a very interesting watch because England has lost 5 of their last 6 World Cup knockout matches against European opponents. You think about Croatia. You think about they played Belgium in the 3rd place game in 2018. You think about, of course, France in 22. Just in recent tournaments, they have played big opposition, and they just have not been able to get across that hump. Now, this Norway team is not those teams, but they easily could be with the way Haaland is playing. That is going to be quite interesting how England decide to lock him down. One of Haaland's weaknesses in the Premier League will most likely be a starting center back tomorrow, and that is Dan Burn, the tall-headed freak of nature from Newcastle. He has been known to lock down Erling Haaland in games in the Premier League, so I will not be surprised if Thomas Tuchel implements him tomorrow in a big way. Overall, though, I know both teams haven't had the most exciting of knockout stages. For Norway, it was 2-1 victories that you needed to score in the 80th minute or past to win. For England, the struggle against DR Congo, having to get bailed out by Kane. The game at the Azteca is just a game at the Azteca. You can't say anything other than that. This has been an interesting challenge, and now they are opposed to a different challenge, which is going to be the heat and humidity of Miami, Florida. How that develops is going to be quite interesting to watch, especially for a team like England, who have gone from Atlanta, where they were playing in a climate-controlled environment, going to Mexico City at the Azteca, the highest elevation at this World Cup, playing in those conditions, and now flying to Miami, playing at 5 p.m., dead heat of day. How is that going to develop for them? You look at Norway, that first game against Cote d'Ivoire, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, was in Philadelphia, or it was in Dallas. So they were in a climate-controlled environment. Then they went to New York, New Jersey, where they played outside against Brazil, and then they go down to Miami now. The heat is going to be a big factor in this game. One of the games where a hydration bracket actually makes sense. Overall, though, I'm still taking England. The favorites have won their first 2 matches here. Now, not convincingly, but the favorites have moved on to the semifinals, so I am taking England here. We move on to the final knockout quarterfinal game of this 2026 World Cup, 9 p.m. from Kansas City, Missouri. It is Argentina, the defending champions, taking on Switzerland, a team that has had quite the run to get here to this their first quarterfinal since 1958. Now you look at Argentina, perfect run here so far. 3-0 win against Algeria, a 2-0 win against Austria, a 3-1 win against Jordan. You get to the knockout stage. This is where things got sketchy. They had to go to extra time against Cabo Verde where they won 3-2. And then it took a miracle of epic proportions to come back from 2-0 down to win 3-2 against Egypt. For Switzerland, on the other side of things, they started with a just bad 1-1 draw against Qatar. Just not a good look whatsoever. They followed that up with a 4-1 win against Bosnia and Herzegovina. Followed that up by winning the Group B, beating Canada 2-1 in Vancouver. They then stayed in Vancouver for their next 2 games where they got a 2-0 win against Algeria. And then in one of the most boring games of the tournament, they played a 0-0 draw against Colombia where they went on to win the penalty shootout 4-3. Now, if you noticed, in all those score lines for Argentina especially, they've scored at least 2 goals in every game so far at this World Cup. And you look at Switzerland, they have kept a clean sheet in their past 2 games. They haven't been playing the toughest of competitions, but Colombia, kind of similar to Argentina, obviously, both play in South America. Both have had interesting tournaments, to say the least. Obviously, Colombia had a few hiccups here and there, but they still made it onto the knockout stage, made it to the round of 16 where they only went out on penalties, and they were probably the better team in that game, but just the way Switzerland play, they were locking them down. Switzerland is going to have to play that game again, if not even better, because truly, I think the only way they are going through here is in a penalty shootout. So whatever Argentina does, or whatever you hold Argentina to, you have to at least match that, I believe, for them to win this game. Now, of course, there is a question in play. Switzerland just went the full 120 plus penalty kicks. They just did that on Tuesday. Now we're back here on Saturday. They're playing another big game. How much energy is depleted here? That is going to be a major concern. I mean, you could probably say the same for Argentina. They have had to fight and claw to get back to this stage. This is going to be quite interesting to see how that develops. Now, these 2 sides have faced off at the World Cup twice. Back in 1966, they faced off in, I believe, the 3rd round of that tournament, if I'm not mistaken, where Argentina won that game 2-0. And then once again in the knockout stage in 2014 in the round of 16, it was an Angel Di Maria goal in the 118th minute of extra time that sent Argentina through to the quarterfinal with a 1-0 victory. Like I said, Switzerland always have kind of played this park the bus style, and honestly, they have looked quite good this tournament at doing that. Switzerland are going to have to play almost the same game that they did in 2014, except they have to make it those extra 2 minutes to get to a penalty shootout. Now, I know if there is one team you probably don't want to be going up against in a penalty shootout at this World Cup, it is probably Argentina. With their experience in penalty shootouts, I probably wouldn't want to go up against them. But Switzerland had the recent experience, obviously just, 5 days ago. That is going to be quite interesting to see how that dynamic develops. If this game stays 0-0 throughout, what kind of substitutions do you see made to potentially go to a penalty shootout? We've seen Messi miss a few penalties he's taken here at this World Cup. Does that idea come into play if we're getting close to a penalty shootout? All major questions, I feel like, will be answered tomorrow night. Now, this is, if I'm not mistaken, the final night game of this World Cup, because France-Spain is, I believe, at 3 p.m. in Dallas. Whoever wins these two games is at 3 p.m. in Atlanta. Then it is a 5 p.m. kickoff in Miami for the third place game, and then the final kicks off at 3 p.m. So the final night game of this tournament will all come down to Argentina and Switzerland. It is going to be an incredible game to watch, but as I have said, the favorites have been going through. So I am taking Argentina here. Their dark magic works again. They move on to the semifinal, where obviously I predict they play England, and I think FIFA gets what they want, because those are two absolutely monumental matchups. And of course, if we get there, we will preview all of that, because boy, the storylines are glorious there. So that is going to wrap it up for this final quarterfinal preview of the 2026 World Cup here on the Nick Burt Sports Network. Thank you so much for watching. If you just stumbled across this video, make sure you click like, make sure you click subscribe. Tell me about you know about it, because we'll be back here tonight to recap both of these matches. And then we will be back here to preview both semifinal games early in the week. There is still a lot to get to here. Once these games are over, there's only 4 games left at this World Cup. So sad to see it go. So thank you so much for watching, and we will see you again soon for another episode here on the Nick Burt Sports Network.